Rebecca Mitchell froze as she heard her 9-year-old daughter Emma beg on her knees in the kitchen of her Boston home. "Mommy, please don't make me go to First Communion. I promise to be good, but I don't want to go back to that room with Father Michael anymore." For 3 months, every Wednesday and Saturday afternoon, the girl participated in the preparation at St. Catherine's Church. But no one imagined what really happened when the doors of the sacristy closed. What Rebecca discovered while investigating would make the entire parish of Brookline tremble. But to understand how we got here, we need to go back a few weeks, when everything seemed normal and safe in Rebecca and Emma Mitchell's lives. Rebecca has always been a dutiful and devoted mother, especially after she became a single mother 2 years ago. At the age of 36, she worked as a nurse at Boston Medical Center, working long shifts but always ensuring that Emma, her only daughter, had attention, affection, and constant presence. David's divorce had not been easy for either of them, but they became even closer, creating a deep complicity that only single mothers and daughters can understand. Rebecca went to great lengths to ensure that Emma had a happy, stable, and loving childhood. Emma, at age 9, was the ray of sunshine in Rebecca's life. The girl had long brown hair, bright green eyes, and a smile that lit up any room. She was cheerful, spontaneous, confident, and extremely affectionate. She loved to draw, sing, and especially participate in church activities. The Catholic faith has always been important to the Mitchell family, a tradition passed down from generation to generation by Rebecca's grandmother, who had emigrated from Ireland in the 1950s. Attending Sunday Mass at St. Catherine's Church was a fundamental part of the family routine, something Rebecca proudly maintained even after the divorce. St. Catherine's Church, located in the heart of Brookline, Massachusetts, was a nearly 100-year-old traditional parish with grey stone walls, colourful stained glass windows that told biblical stories, and a towering steeple that towered over the quiet residential neighbourhood. The community was predominantly Italian-American and Irish, made up of devout families who had known each other for decades. On Sundays, the church was packed with children running around the manicured garden while the adults chatted on the steps after Mass. Father Michael O'Brien had been the spiritual leader of the parish for 15 years. At 52, he was a tall, broad-shouldered man with grey hair slicked back and piercing blue eyes. His voice was deep and firm, the kind of voice that commanded attention and respect. He was known for being a strict, traditional priest who valued discipline and obedience to the teachings of the church. Some parishioners considered him too harsh, while others admired his tireless dedication and in-depth knowledge of the scriptures. Father Michael organized all the activities of the parish, from youth groups to spiritual retreats, and was respected by all as a figure of undisputed moral authority. In this video, you'll discover how one mother trusted her maternal instinct even when everyone said she was overreacting. You'll see how small signs, which most would ignore, became the key to saving your daughter. Courage and determination can change everything in a matter of hours. Every detail here is based on true events. The story you're about to meet reveals how emotional predators hide behind masks of respect and authority, and how one mother had to face an entire institution to protect her daughter from profound psychological damage. If you've made it this far, it's because real history interests you. Help this content reach more people. Leave the like, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell. It all started at the end of August, when Emma was selected for the catechesis class that prepared the children for their first communion. Rebecca remembered perfectly that sunny Sunday, when Father Michael announced during Mass that 18 children had been chosen to begin their studies the following month. Emma was sitting next to Rebecca, wearing her favorite blue dress, the one with the little white flowers that her grandmother had given her as a gift for her birthday. When the priest read Emma Mitchell's name from the list, The girl turned to her mother with a huge smile, eyes shining with pure happiness. "Mom, I was chosen. I'm going to make my first communion," whispered Emma, almost jumping for joy in the pew. Rebecca hugged her daughter tenderly, feeling her heart warm with pride. "I'm so happy for you, my love. You will learn so many beautiful things about our faith." After the Mass, Rebecca and Emma joined the small group of parents and children who gathered in the parish hall to receive orientations. Father Michael was standing in front, his impeccable black cassock and a discreet smile on his face. He held a time-worn brown briefcase and began to explain the details of the catechesis program. "Welcome, everyone. Classes will take place every Wednesday at 3 in the afternoon and on Saturdays at 2 in the afternoon. For 3 months. It is a serious commitment, as we are preparing these children for one of the most important sacraments in Catholic life," said the priest in his deep and firm voice. "I expect commitment, respect, and dedication from everyone." Rebecca watched Emma, who was standing next to the other children, all excited and talking quietly to each other. He recognized some familiar faces. Sophie O'Connor, a 10-year-old blonde girl whose family lived 2 streets down, Tommy Patterson, a shy 8-year-old son of a friend of Rebecca's, and Lily Chen, a delicate little 9-year-old whose parents were doctors at the same hospital where Rebecca worked. Father Michael continued, "The children will receive teaching materials. They will learn about the commandments, the sacraments, the importance of confession and communion. It will be a transformative spiritual journey for each of them." Rebecca felt comforted. The idea of Emma learning about values, ethics, and spirituality under the guidance of such a traditional and respected institution brought peace to her heart. She signed the authorization papers, received the printed schedule, and left the church with Emma, who couldn't stop talking about how excited she was. In the first days of September, the routine was naturally established. Every Wednesday, Rebecca left the hospital early to pick up Emma from Brookline Elementary School and take her to church. On Saturdays, after a quiet breakfast at home, the two would go together to St. Catherine's. Rebecca usually stayed in the church garden, talking to other mothers while the children had school, or she would go shopping at the nearby market and return 2 hours later to pick up Emma. The first 3 weeks passed without any apparent problems. Emma came home always excited, telling about the biblical stories that Father Michael taught, about the drawings they made, about the religious songs they sang. Rebecca listened attentively, asking questions, encouraging her daughter to share every detail. "Father Michael said I have a pure soul, Mother," Emma said one afternoon while sipping orange juice in the kitchen. "He said that children like me are special to God." Rebecca smiled, stroking her daughter's hair. "You are special, my love. Very special." St. Catherine's Church had a physical structure that Rebecca knew well. The main nave, with its varnished dark wood benches, led up to the altar decorated with fresh flowers every week. On the left side, there was a door that gave access to the parish room, a large space with round tables, folding chairs, and a whiteboard where catechesis classes took place. On the right side of the altar, a smaller door led to the sacristy, the place where the priest prepared himself before masses, kept the liturgical vestments, the chalices, and other sacred objects. Rebecca had rarely entered the sacristy. It was a space reserved for the clergy and the closest assistants. Father Michael conducted the classes with seriousness and discipline. He wasn't the type to smile a lot or make jokes to lighten the room. His teaching method was traditional, focused on the repetition of prayers, the memorization of concepts, and the importance of obedience to divine commandments. Some children found the lessons a bit overwhelming, but most parents approved of the strict approach. After all, religion was a serious thing, wasn't it? Rebecca noticed that Emma always came back with a serene and satisfied expression after school. The girl seemed to be absorbing it all with genuine enthusiasm, At home, Emma began to pray alone before bed, something she did not do so often before. He drew crosses and white doves in his sketchbooks. Rebecca was grateful to see her daughter developing such a strong spiritual connection. But it was in the 3rd week of September that the first sign of discomfort appeared. It was a Wednesday afternoon. Rebecca had picked Emma up from church as usual at 5 o'clock. Usually, Emma would run out of the church door, waving to her friends and jumping to the car, talking endlessly about what she had learned. But that day, Emma walked slowly to the car, her backpack slung over one shoulder, staring at the ground. His face was pale, his lips pursed, his eyes lacking his usual sparkle. Rebecca frowned, worried. "How are you, my love? Are you tired?" Emma got into the car and put on her seatbelt without saying anything. He only nodded, an almost imperceptible movement. "Emma, what happened? Did anything happen in class?" Rebecca insisted, turning around on the bench to get a better look at her daughter. "Nothing, Mum. I'm just tired," Emma replied in a low voice, avoiding Rebecca's gaze. Rebecca started the car and started driving back home, but she couldn't shake the nagging feeling in her chest. Emma was communicative, expansive. She was never so closed. During the 15-minute drive, the girl remained silent, staring out the window, lost in thoughts that Rebecca couldn't access. When they got home, Emma went straight to her room without even asking for the afternoon snack, something completely out of the ordinary. Rebecca stood in the living room, looking at the stairs where her daughter had climbed, feeling a tightness in her chest. Something was different, but she didn't know exactly what. That evening over dinner, Rebecca prepared Emma's favorite dish, pasta with meatballs and homemade tomato sauce. She set the table with care, lit a scented vanilla candle, and called her daughter downstairs. Emma appeared in her pajamas, her hair still wet from the bath, and sat down at the table with a distant expression. "So, tell me about today's class," Rebecca began with an encouraging smile, serving pasta on her daughter's plate. "What did you learn?" Emma stirred the pasta with her fork, winding the strands slowly. "Father Michael talked about secrets." Rebecca raised her eyebrows, curious. "Secrets? What kind of secrets?" Emma finally looked at her mother, and there was something in her eyes that Rebecca couldn't fully decipher. It wasn't fear exactly, but a mixture of confusion and hesitation. "He said that some things are only between God, him and special children, that not everything needs to be told to parents." A small tightness in Rebecca's chest manifested itself. She tried to keep her tone of voice light and carefree. I see. He meant about confession, didn't he? When we confess our sins to the priest, it is between the person, the priest, and God. Emma shrugged. "I think so." Rebecca watched her daughter carefully, but decided not to press. Maybe Emma was just tired, or maybe Father Michael had talked about the sacrament of confession in a way that the girl didn't fully understand. It was normal for children to be confused by more complex religious concepts, wasn't it? But then Emma asked a question that prompted Rebecca. "Mum, can I miss Saturday class?" Rebecca put her fork on her plate, surprised. "Missing? Why, sweetie? You were so excited about the lessons." Emma went back to stirring the pasta, avoiding her mother's gaze. I just wanted to stay at home with you. We could watch movies, make popcorn, that kind of thing." Rebecca's heart softened. Sometimes he forgot that Emma was still a small child who needed free time, play, and rest. "I would love to spend Saturday with you, my love, but catechesis is important. You can't miss it without a serious reason. It is a commitment that we have made to the Church and to God. There are only 2.5 more months left, and then you will make your first communion. It's going to be a beautiful day. The whole family is going to be there. Grandma is coming from Providence especially to see you." Emma sighed deeply and went back to eating in silence. Rebecca felt a pang of guilt, but soon pushed her away. She was doing the right thing, teaching responsibility and commitment to her daughter. That night, after Emma went to sleep, Rebecca sat on the sofa in the living room with a cup of chamomile tea in her hands, thinking about the dinner conversation. Perhaps she was exaggerating, but something about the way Emma had said those words about secrets bothered her. She found herself thinking, is Father Michael using child-appropriate language? Isn't he scaring Emma with concepts of sin that are too heavy for her age? Rebecca shook her head, trying to push away her thoughts. Father Michael had been respected for 15 years. Hundreds of children had already passed through his hands and made their first communions without any problem. She was being overprotective, that's right. The divorce had made her more anxious, more controlling, always afraid that something bad would happen to Emma. I needed to relax, trust the institutions, trust the people. But even so, a little voice in the back of his mind whispered, "Pay attention, something is not right." If this revelation is arousing in you a deep curiosity about what really happened, comment right now, "I want more stories," and please leave your like on this video. The next 2 weeks were even more worrying for Rebecca. Emma continued to go to catechism classes, but the change in behavior intensified alarmingly. The girl who used to wake up humming now got up from the bed with difficulty, shuffling her feet to the kitchen, eating breakfast in silence. The colourful drawings that Emma loved to make gave way to gloomy scribbles with dark colours and closed shapes. 5 weeks had passed since the beginning of classes. It was early October, and the leaves of Brookline's trees were beginning to turn orange and reddish, creating a New England fall scene. But Rebecca barely noticed the beauty of the station. His attention was completely focused on Emma, who every day seemed more distant, more closed in on herself. On Wednesday of the 5th week, Emma woke up complaining of a stomach ache. Rebecca put her hand on her daughter's forehead, but there was no fever. She asked where it hurt exactly, and Emma pointed to the stomach area, saying she was nauseous. Rebecca, always cautious about her daughter's health, decided to leave her at home and take her to the pediatrician. Dr. Richard Harris was Emma's pediatrician since she was born. A 60-year-old man with white hair and gold-rimmed glasses had an office a few blocks from the Mitchell home. Rebecca was able to make an appointment for the middle of the afternoon. In the office, Dr. Harris examined Emma carefully, measured her blood pressure, palpated her abdomen, asked questions about feeding and sleeping. "Physically, I can't find anything wrong with Emma," said Dr. Harris, taking the stethoscope from his neck and sitting in the swivel chair. "There are no signs of infection, inflammation, or any gastrointestinal problem. It may just be a passing malaise, or maybe stress." Rebecca frowned. Stress? She's only 9 years old. Dr. Harris smiled with understanding. "Children also feel stress, Rebecca. Changes in routine, school pressure, unresolved emotional issues." "Has anything different happened in her life lately?" Rebecca hesitated, then mentioned she started First Communion catechesis classes 5 weeks ago. "I was very excited at first, but lately it seems different, quieter, more closed." Dr. Harris nodded. "It may be that she is feeling pressure with her religious commitment. Some children are anxious about the idea of sin, of doing everything right, of pleasing God. It is important that you talk to her, ask her how she is feeling without judgment. Sometimes they just need to let off steam." Rebecca thanked her and returned home with Emma, who spent the rest of the day lying on the couch watching cartoons. But on Thursday morning, Emma said she still didn't feel well and didn't want to go to school. Rebecca, worried, allowed her to miss another day. Friday, the same story. Emma complained of headache, tiredness, lack of appetite. On Saturday, the day of catechesis, Emma had what could only be described as a breakdown. In the morning, when Rebecca mentioned that they needed to get ready to go to church, Emma began to cry uncontrollably, saying that she didn't want to go, that she was feeling sick, that she needed to stay home. Rebecca knelt in front of her daughter, holding her shoulders firmly but gently. "Emma, what's going on? You need to tell me. Are any children being mean to you in catechesis? Did someone hurt you?" Emma shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "No, Mom, nobody did anything. I just don't want to go." Rebecca felt a lump in her throat. Seeing her daughter in that state of anguish was too painful, but at the same time, she couldn't understand why. If no one was hurting Emma, if nothing bad had happened, why such an extreme reaction? He ended up giving in that Saturday. He called the church office and left a message warning that Emma would not go for health reasons. She spent the day with her daughter at home, trying to make her feel better, but Emma remained apathetic, without energy, without that sparkle in her eyes. At night, Rebecca began to have nightmares. He dreamed that Emma was trapped in a dark room, calling for her, and Rebecca could not find the door. He woke up in a cold sweat, his heart racing. She got out of bed and went to Emma's room just to make sure her daughter was okay, sleeping peacefully. But Emma was not sleeping peacefully. She was curled up in the fetal position, hugging the teddy bear she had received as a baby. Her face contracted even in sleep. The following week, Emma returned to catechesis classes. Rebecca insisted, explaining that she could not continue to miss it, that she needed to fulfill the commitment. Emma went, but came back worse than before. She began to have nightly nightmares, waking up crying, screaming, but when Rebecca ran into the room asking what had happened, Emma couldn't or wouldn't explain it. He only said that he had had bad dreams. Rebecca tried to talk to Emma several times, but the girl closed herself more and more. When Rebecca asked directly about catechesis, Emma replied mechanically, "It's just class, Mom. No big deal." But his body language said otherwise. The slumped shoulders, the lifeless eyes, the way he bit his lips nervously. Rebecca began talking to other mothers at the end of Mass, trying to understand if anyone else noticed anything strange. One Sunday, after Mass, he met Mrs. Patricia Patterson in the parking lot. Patricia was a nice 40-year-old woman, mother of Tommy, the 8-year-old boy who was also in catechesis. "Patricia, can I ask you a question?" Rebecca began, trying to look casual. "How is Tommy doing about the catechism classes?" Patricia smiled broadly. "Oh, he's loving it. He comes home all excited, telling the stories that Father Michael teaches. I think he's really learning a lot about our faith. Why? Isn't Emma enjoying it?" Rebecca hesitated. "Not exactly. She seems tired, quieter. I don't know if you're finding the classes too heavy." Patricia placed her hand on Rebecca's shoulder in a comforting gesture. "Each child reacts in a different way, Rebecca. Perhaps Emma is more sensitive. Father Michael is strict, everyone knows that, but it's because he takes faith seriously. I'm sure it's no big deal." Rebecca also talked to Mrs. Linda Chen, Lily's mother, in line at the grocery store. Linda was a pediatrician, Rebecca's co-worker, an intelligent and caring woman. "Linda, is Lily enjoying the catechism classes?" Rebecca asked as she placed groceries on the conveyor belt. Linda made a thoughtful expression. "Lily actually participated for the first 3 weeks, but then started vomiting before each class. I thought it was very strange. I took him to the gastro, they did tests, they didn't give anything. I talked to Father Michael, and he suggested that maybe Lily wasn't ready spiritually, that some children need more time. I ended up taking her out of the program. She will make her first communion next year." This information made Rebecca even more alert. Lily had also shown an extreme physical reaction to classes. It wasn't just Emma, but at the same time, other children seemed to be fine. Tommy was happy. Sophie O'Connor, Rebecca had heard, was also participating normally. Rebecca began to question herself incessantly. Was he seeing problems where none existed? Could it be that Emma was just going through a difficult phase, dealing with internal issues that had nothing to do with catechesis? Was Rebecca projecting her own insecurities and paranoia onto her daughter? The contrast between Emma's initial enthusiasm and current apathy was too stark to ignore. But Rebecca felt alone in this realization. No one else seemed to see any problem. Father Michael was respected. The church was a solid and reliable institution. Rebecca began to feel isolated, as if she was going crazy alone. But what happened in the next few hours would destroy all the certainties she had. It was a rainy Sunday in mid-October. Rebecca decided that she needed to talk directly with Father Michael. He could no longer simply watch Emma languish emotionally and doing nothing. She needed answers. She needed to understand what was happening in those classes that affected her daughter so much. After the Mass, Rebecca waited at the door of the church while the parishioners slowly left. Father Michael was in the atrium, greeting people, shaking hands, exchanging a few cordial words. He was surrounded by admirers, as always. Mrs. O'Connor praised the sermon. Mr. Donovan thanked the priest for the visit he had made to his father in the hospital. Sister Martha, the nun responsible for religious education, talked to him about the preparations for the parish's Halloween party. Rebecca waited patiently until the small crowd dispersed. Emma was next to her, head down, holding her mother's hand tightly. When it was finally Rebecca's turn, she stepped forward and smiled politely. "Father Michael, good morning. Could you talk to you for a moment?" The priest turned his piercing blue eyes to Rebecca and then to Emma. There was something about the way he looked at the girl that Rebecca couldn't fully decipher. It was not an affectionate look from a priest to a child in the parish. It was more intense, more serious, almost evaluative. "Of course, Mrs. Mitchell, what can I help her with?" His voice was deep, cordial, but there was a distance in it. Rebecca chose her words carefully. "I'm a little worried about Emma. She was so excited about the catechesis classes at first, but in the last few weeks she has been different, quieter, having nightmares, not wanting to go to class. I wanted to know if you noticed anything, if something happened that I should have known." Father Michael folded his arms, his expression remaining neutral. "Mrs. Mitchell, it is quite normal for children to go through periods of spiritual adaptation. Emma is a sensitive girl, and we are dealing with deep issues of faith, sin, salvation. Some children take longer to process these concepts. It's part of maturing in faith." Rebecca nodded, but she didn't feel satisfied with the answer. "I understand, but she has had physical reactions, belly pain, headache, nightmares. The pediatrician said that there is nothing wrong physically." The priest tilted his head slightly, as if pondering. "Children manifest spiritual anxiety in different ways. Emma is being prepared for one of the most important sacraments in Catholic life. It's natural to feel the weight of that responsibility." Then he added, and his voice took on an almost proud tone, "Actually, Emma has been chosen to be part of a special Wednesday prayer group. There are only 5 children selected, those who show the greatest spiritual potential. It's an honor." Rebecca blinked, surprised. "Special group?" Emma never mentioned it. Father Michael gave a discreet smile. "It is because we ask the children to keep the special prayers private. It is part of learning about humility and quiet devotion. It's not for bragging or bragging." Something in those words made Rebecca's stomach turn, but she couldn't pinpoint exactly what. Why should 9-year-olds need to keep prayers secret? Why was privacy so important? She looked at Emma, who was standing next to her, completely motionless, staring at the floor. "Emma, you didn't tell me about this special group." Emma did not answer. She just shook her mother's hand harder. Father Michael placed a hand on Rebecca's shoulder in a gesture that was supposed to be comforting, but actually made her uncomfortable. "Mrs. Mitchell, trust the process. Emma is in good hands. If there are any real issues, you can rest assured that I will get back to you immediately. But I ask you to have patience and faith." Other people began to approach, wanting to talk to the priest. Rebecca realized that the conversation was over. He thanked her politely and left the church with Emma. But her heart was heavy. Father Michael's words should have reassured her, but in fact they did the opposite. There was something about the way he avoided prolonged eye contact, the way he quickly changed the subject, the way he emphasized privacy and secrecy that set all of Rebecca's alarms off. On the way home, Rebecca tried to talk to Emma. "My love, Father Michael said that you are part of a special group. Why didn't you tell me?" Emma kept looking out the window. "He asked not to tell. He said it's special, that only God, him and us can know." A chill ran down Rebecca's spine. "Emma, you know you can tell me anything, don't you? It doesn't matter what anyone says. Mommy is here to protect you, always." Emma finally looked at her mother, and there were tears in the corners of her eyes. "I know, Mom, but it's complicated." "What's complicated, sweetie? Explain it to me." Emma shook her head and looked out the window again. "I can't. Sorry, Mom, I can't." "If you're here so far, it's because this story is stirring you. What follows will show the exact moment when everything changed. Therefore, at the end of this video, we will reveal the complete outcome with details that few know. Stay with me until the end. If this story is already changing the way you see maternal protection, subscribe and activate the bell in this video so that this message reaches other mothers. That night, Rebecca couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, Emma's words echoing in her mind. "I can't. I can't." Why would a 9-year-old feel like he can't tell his own mother? What kind of special group required this level of secrecy? At 3 a.m, Rebecca got up, went to the small office on the second floor of the house, and turned on the computer. He started researching. He typed in Google, "warning signs in children, change in child behavior, religious psychological manipulation." The results that appeared on the screen made her stomach turn. He found articles about how emotional predators use authority and religion to control children. He read about manipulation techniques that included creating a sense of privilege, "you're special," imposing secrets you can't tell, using religious guilt, "God will be disappointed," isolating the victim from her parents. Every word she read seemed to describe exactly what was happening to Emma. Rebecca read testimonies from adults who had been victims of psychological abuse in religious settings as children. The marks lasted for decades. Chronic anxiety, difficulty trusting people, recurring nightmares, constant sense of guilt. His heart raced. Was that what was happening to Emma? Was she being emotionally manipulated by someone who was supposed to protect her spiritually? But at the same time, Rebecca struggled with guilt and doubt. Father Michael had been respected for 15 years. Hundreds of children had passed through his hands. If he was really a manipulator, someone would have noticed by now, right? Other families have already denounced it. Rebecca felt torn between the maternal instinct that screamed that something was wrong and the reason that tried to find logical and innocent explanations. In the morning, Rebecca was decided. He called Boston Medical Center and asked for time off. It was the first time in 3 years that he would miss work without being sick. Her supervisor, Karen, was surprised but understanding. "Is everything okay, Rebecca? You never miss it." "It's a family emergency, Karen. I need to solve something urgent with my daughter." "Of course, no problem. Take care of your little girl. We get by here." Rebecca prepared breakfast for Emma with special affection. Heart-shaped pancakes, fresh strawberries, natural orange juice. When Emma came downstairs, still in her pajamas, her eyes swollen with sleep, Rebecca hugged her tightly. "Good morning, my love. Today I'm off duty. We're going to spend the day together, just the two of us. How about it?" Emma nestled in her mother's embrace. "Really, Mum? Aren't you going to work?" "No. Today is the day for us to be together. We can do whatever you want. watching movies, baking cookies, going to the park. Whatever you prefer. Emma smiled, a small but genuine smile, the first Rebecca had seen in weeks. I just want to stay here with you, Mom. They spent the morning together in the living room, watching Emma's favorite movies, making popcorn, wrapped in blankets. Rebecca watched her daughter carefully, noticing how she laughed at the jokes in the movie, how she hummed the songs, how she seemed lighter, more herself. It was as if, away from the pressure of catechesis, Emma was back to being the cheerful girl she had been. In the middle of the afternoon, while Emma was drawing on the kitchen table, Rebecca sat next to her with a cup of tea. She chose her words carefully, trying not to scare her daughter. Emma, I want to make you a promise. If something is wrong, no matter what it is, Mom will fix it. You don't have to carry any weight alone. Do you understand? Emma stopped drawing and looked at her mother. There was something in her eyes, a mixture of relief and fear. Do you promise, Mom? I promise, my love. With all my heart. Emma dropped her crayon and threw herself into Rebecca's arms, hugging her tightly. Thank you for believing in me, Mom, she whispered. Rebecca felt the tears burn her eyes. Emma hadn't explicitly said anything was wrong, but that desperate embrace, those emotionally charged words, said it all. Her daughter was asking for help in the only way she could. At that moment, Rebecca made a definitive decision. The following Saturday, during the catechesis from 2 to 4 in the afternoon, she would not leave Emma at the door of the church and would leave as she always did. This time he would be close by. I would observe. I would investigate. He would find out exactly what was going on in those classes that were emotionally destroying his daughter. Maternal intuition is a powerful instinct that exists for a reason. And Rebecca's intuition was screaming that Emma was in danger. It wasn't physical danger, perhaps, but it was real danger nonetheless. Emotional damage, psychological manipulation, mind control. All of these leave deep scars, sometimes deeper than physical wounds. Rebecca spent the next few days mentally preparing. He researched more about psychological manipulation in religious environments. He wrote down all the signs Emma had shown: change in behavior, nightmares, refusal to talk, mention of secrets, emotional isolation. She spoke briefly with her ex-husband David on the phone, explaining her concerns. David, as always, was skeptical. Rebecca, don't you think you're exaggerating? It's Father Michael. He is respected. Emma is probably just nervous about her first communion. But Rebecca was not deterred. David, I know our daughter. Something is wrong. I can feel it. David sighed. That's okay. Do what you think is necessary, but be careful not to create problems where there are none. Finally, Saturday arrived. Rebecca woke up with her heart racing. It was a day of catechesis, and it would be the day she would discover the truth. At 1:45 p.m., Rebecca and Emma parked in front of St. Catherine's Church. The day was cloudy, with grey clouds covering the Boston sky. The cold October wind made the dry leaves roll on the floor of the parking lot. Emma was quiet in the passenger seat, looking out over the church with a heartbreaking expression of resignation. "Come on, my love," Rebecca said in a soft voice, turning off the car. They walked together to the entrance of the church. Other children were already arriving, accompanied by their parents. Rebecca saw Sophie O'Connor walking in with her mother, Mrs. O'Connor. She also saw two other girls she recognized from classes, Isabella Torres and Megan Walsh, all between 8 and 10 years old, all with expressions too serious for children of this age. Father Michael was at the door, welcoming the children with a discreet smile. When he saw Emma, his face changed subtly. The smile remained, but his eyes became more intense, more penetrating. He put his hand on Emma's shoulder and said, "Welcome, Emma. Today we will have a special class." Rebecca noticed how Emma cringed slightly under the priest's touch. He noticed how the girl didn't respond, just nodded. and she noticed especially how Father Michael looked at her, at Rebecca, with an expression that seemed to say, "You can go away, we take care of it here." But Rebecca wasn't going away. Not this time. "See you in a little while, my love," Rebecca said, kissing Emma's forehead. Then he turned and walked back to the car, but he didn't get in. She stood next to the vehicle, waiting. He saw the other 17 children enter. He watched his parents leave, one by one, until the parking lot was empty. Then Rebecca walked back to the church. But this time he didn't enter through the main door. He went around the building and entered through the side door, the one that led directly to the nave. The church was quiet, with only a few candles lit near the altar. Rebecca sat on the bench at the back, in the dark corner where she would hardly be noticed. From there he had a clear view of the door that led to the parish room, where the classes took place. For 20 minutes, everything seemed normal. Rebecca could hear, from afar, Father Michael's voice teaching, the children responding in chorus, the sound of pages being turned. All very traditional, very appropriate. But then, at 2:15 p.m., the door to the parish hall opened. Father Michael left, followed by only 5 girls. Rebecca recognized them all: Emma, Sophie, Isabella, Megan, and a 5th girl who didn't know the name, all between 8 and 10 years old. The priest led the 5 towards the sacristy, that private and reserved space next to the altar. Rebecca's heart raced. She stood up slowly, trying not to make a sound. She saw Father Michael open the door of the sacristy and gesture for the girls to enter. They obeyed in silence, with their heads down. Then the priest came in behind them and closed the door. Rebecca felt her legs tremble. Why only 5 girls? Why in the sacristy, away from the other children? Why in a closed room? The other 13 children remained in the parish hall with Mrs. Rodriguez, the volunteer catechist who helped in the classes, but these 5, the special group, were isolated with the priest. Rebecca waited a few seconds, trying to control her breathing. Then he walked silently to the door of the sacristy. He put his hand on the wooden frame, feeling the cold of the surface. He put his ear to the door. At first, he could only hear muffled murmurs, but then Father Michael's deep voice grew louder, and Rebecca was able to pick up a few words. Sin, secret, disappointment, God's punishment, families will suffer. Rebecca felt her blood run cold. What kind of conversation was that? What kind of religious teaching involved threatening children with divine punishment and family suffering? She held the door handle, about to open, about to invade that space and interrupt whatever was happening inside. But then he heard footsteps coming from the hallway. Someone was coming. Sister Martha, probably, or some other church employee. Rebecca couldn't be seen there, not yet. I needed more evidence, I needed more information. If he confronted the priest now, he would have all the excuses ready, all the religious explanations prepared. And she, once again, would look like a paranoid and overprotective mother. Quickly, Rebecca walked away from the sacristy door and left the church through the same side door through which she had entered. His heart was racing, his breath panting. She walked to the car, got in, closed the door, and sat there shaking. For the first time, it had concrete evidence. It wasn't paranoia. It was not an exaggeration. There was indeed something profoundly wrong going on. Father Michael would separate a select group of girls, take them to a private room, lock the door, and talk about sin, secrecy, punishment. This was not religious teaching. That was psychological manipulation. Rebecca waited in the car for another hour and a half. At 4 p.m., the children began to leave. Emma was one of the last. When he walked out the door of the church, his face was pale, his eyes red, as if he had cried. Rebecca got out of the car and walked up to her, spreading her arms. Emma threw herself into her mother's embrace in despair. In the car, on the way home, Rebecca tried to keep her voice calm. "How was the class today, my love?" Emma was curled up in the passenger seat, hugging her backpack to her chest. It was normal. "Did you go to the special room again?" Rebecca asked carefully. Emma tensed. "How do you know that?" "Father Michael told me, remember? I said that you are part of a special group. What do you do in this room?" Emma hesitated, biting her lips. Finally, in a low and trembling voice, he replied, "We pray, and he talks upon our souls, about how we can disappoint God if we tell our special secrets." Rebecca squeezed the steering wheel tightly. "What secrets, Emma? Secrets about what?" Emma shook her head, tears beginning to flow. "I can't tell, Mom. He said that if I talk about the special prayers, my family will suffer. God will be sad with us. You can go to hell because of me." Rebecca felt a surge of anger so intense that she had to stop her car on the side of the road. She turned to Emma, held her daughter's face gently, and looked into her eyes. "Emma, listen carefully to what Mommy is going to tell you. God is love. God would never, ever send anyone to hell because of a child telling the truth to his own mother. And if someone tells you that, they're lying. He is using the name of God to scare you, to control you, and that's wrong. Very, very wrong." Emma began to sob. "But what if he's right, Mom? What if God really gets mad at us?" Rebecca hugged her daughter tightly, feeling her own tears flow. "God doesn't work like that, my love. God wants us to be happy, healthy, protected. Anyone who uses fear of God to make you suffer is doing the wrong thing, not you." Finally, Emma broke down completely, crying into her mother's lap, releasing weeks of accumulated fear, guilt, and confusion. Rebecca held her, stroking her hair, whispering words of comfort. And while holding her daughter, Rebecca made a definitive decision. It didn't matter what. It didn't matter who believed her or not. It didn't matter Father Michael's reputation, the tradition of the church, the opinion of the community. Emma was being psychologically abused, and Rebecca would not rest until she exposed the truth and protected her daughter. On Monday morning, Rebecca did not go to work. He spent the day researching, planning, gathering courage. It needed more evidence before acting. He needed concrete evidence that no one could deny. And it was then that the discovery that would change everything happened. Emma had left her backpack open in the living room, and when Rebecca went to put it away in the hallway closet, something fell to the floor. It was a small, black-bound notebook that Rebecca had never seen before. She picked it up, curious, and opened it. The first pages were drawings, but they were not the colorful, cheerful drawings that Emma used to make. They were disturbing images, figures of crying children, closed doors with huge padlocks, dark crosses, faceless figures with open mouths in silent screams. Rebecca turned the pages with trembling hands, and with each image her heart tightened. There were words written over and over again, as if Emma had copied sentences 100 times, like a child punished in the old school. "I can't tell. I can't tell you. I can't tell." Page after page, the same sentence in trembling letters. Rebecca continued flipping, and found drawings of a dark room with a huge cross on the wall. 5 girls, drawn with huge tears flowing from their eyes, and on a specific page, with more neat handwriting, as if Emma had written it very carefully, was the phrase that made Rebecca's world fall apart. "Father Michael said that if I tell my mother, she will go to hell because of me. I don't want my mother to suffer. God is watching over me. If I speak, my whole family will be punished. I have to keep the secret. I have to be strong." Tears began to stream down Rebecca's face before she could even fully process what she was reading. His hands were shaking so much that he almost dropped the notebook. That wasn't just psychological manipulation, it was systematic emotional torture. A grown man, in a position of religious authority, was using the concept of God, of sin, of eternal punishment to terrorize 9-year-olds and keep them silent about whatever was going on in that room. Rebecca picked up her phone with her hands still shaking and began to photograph each page of the notebook. Click after click, he recorded the disturbing drawings, the phrases repeated obsessively, Emma's written account of the fear of condemning her mother to hell. It was concrete, indisputable evidence. There was no denying it. There was no way to explain it innocently. That notebook was material proof that Emma was being subjected to psychological abuse. When she finished photographing all the pages, Rebecca carefully put the notebook back in Emma's backpack exactly as it was. She didn't want her daughter to realize that she had found out. Not yet. I needed a plan. I needed to act with intelligence and strategy. If he confronted Father Michael without preparation, he would have all the religious excuses ready, all the arguments about doctrine and spiritual teaching, and she, once again, would be seen as a hysterical and overprotective mother. Rebecca spent the rest of that Monday in a state of absolute determination. He ate almost nothing. He couldn't concentrate on anything but what he needed to do. When Emma returned from school that afternoon, Rebecca greeted her with a long, tight embrace, whispering, "I love you more than anything in this world, my love, more than anything." Emma nestled in her mother's embrace, and Rebecca could feel how tense her daughter's small body was, loaded with an anxiety that no 9-year-old should ever know. That night, after Emma went to sleep, Rebecca picked up the phone and called David, her ex-husband. It was almost 10 at night, but she couldn't wait. David answered at the third ring, his voice sleepy. "Rebecca, is everything okay? Is it Emma?" "David, I need you to listen to me. I need you to believe in me." Rebecca took a deep breath and began to tell her everything. Emma's change in behavior, the nightmares, the mentions of secrets, the special group, the closed room, and finally, the notebook. As he spoke, he sent the photos he had taken to his cell phone. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Rebecca listened to David taking a deep breath, processing everything. Finally, he spoke, and his voice was different, without the skepticism of before. "My God, Rebecca, this is serious, very serious." "I know," Rebecca replied, feeling immense relief at finally having someone who believed in her. "I'm going to confront you, David. I'm going to expose what he's doing. But I need to do it right. I need support." "You have my full support," David said without hesitation. "What do you need me to do?" "For now, just be on alert. If I need you, I'll call. And if something goes wrong, if something happens, you have these photos as evidence." "Nothing will go wrong," David said firmly. "You're the strongest woman I know, Rebecca, and you're doing the right thing. Our daughter needs you. I'll be ready for whatever you need." After hanging up with David, Rebecca spent more than an hour thinking about who else she could trust, who else could be an ally in this battle. And then he remembered Mrs. O'Connor, Sophie's mother. Rebecca had noticed that Sophie was also part of the special group, and Mrs. O'Connor had casually mentioned weeks ago that her daughter looked different. Perhaps she was also noticing the signs, but not having the courage to admit it. It was too late to call, so Rebecca decided to wait until the next morning. She spent the night practically awake, lying in bed with her eyes fixed on the ceiling, planning every step of what she would do. Wednesday afternoon, during special group hours, she wouldn't stand outside the door listening. This time, he would invade the sacristy. It would interrupt whatever was going on inside. And he wouldn't leave until everyone knew the truth. On Tuesday morning, Rebecca called Mrs. O'Connor. The woman answered in a cheerful voice, but Rebecca got straight to the point. "Janet, it's Rebecca Mitchell, Emma's mother. Can we talk? It's about the catechesis classes. It is urgent." There was a pause, and when Janet answered, her voice was different, more cautious. "Sure, Rebecca. Do you want to come here at home? I can make you a coffee." Half an hour later, Rebecca was sitting in the cozy kitchen of the O'Connor home, a two-story residence just 3 blocks from hers. Janet poured coffee and sat across from Rebecca, her hands wrapping around her cup as if seeking comfort in the heat. "I don't even know where to start," Rebecca said, and then told everything. He watched as Janet's face went from curiosity to shock, from shock to horror, from horror to tears. He showed the pictures of Emma's notebook on his phone, and Janet put her hand to her mouth, sobbing. "My God, Rebecca, a Sophie. Sophie has said similar things, that he cannot disappoint the priest who has important secrets, that if he tells it, he will bring misfortune to the family." Janet wiped away her tears with the back of her hand. "I thought she was being dramatic, you know how children are, but this is not dramatization, it's real." "Is Sophie also part of the special group?" Rebecca asked, even though she already knew the answer. Janet nodded, unable to speak. Finally, he took a deep breath and said, "What are we going to do? We need to protect our daughters." "Tomorrow," Rebecca said with absolute determination, "tomorrow afternoon at 3 o'clock, when he takes the girls into that room, we'll come in. Let's catch whatever he's doing. We will expose the truth in front of those who need to see it. Will you come with me?" Janet didn't hesitate for a second. "I'm going. I will protect my daughter no matter what." The two women spent the next hour planning, mentally preparing for the confrontation to come. When Rebecca left Janet's house, she felt less alone. They had a united front now. Two mothers determined to protect their daughters from an emotional predator who lurked behind cassock and crucifix. That night, Rebecca went to Emma's room after the girl had fallen asleep. She sat on the edge of the bed, watching her daughter's small, innocent face illuminated by the soft light of the moon-shaped lamp. He ran his hand gently through Emma's brown hair, brushing the locks away from her face. The girl moved slightly in her sleep, but did not wake up. "I'll protect you," Rebecca whispered in the darkness of the room. "It doesn't matter who it is. It doesn't matter what they say. It doesn't matter how long it takes. You are my daughter, my responsibility, my heart, and I'm not going to let anyone hurt you. Tomorrow everything changes, my love. I promise." On Wednesday morning, Rebecca woke up with a sense of absolute purpose. She prepared Emma's breakfast with all the care, pancakes with honey and fresh fruit. Emma came downstairs still sleepy, wearing her school uniform, and Rebecca hugged her for a long moment before letting her sit down. "Mom, you look strange today," Emma commented, looking at Rebecca curiously. Rebecca smiled, a mixture of tenderness and determination. "I'm just happy to have you, my love. That's all." After dropping Emma off at school, Rebecca returned home and spent the next few hours getting ready. He reviewed all the photos in the notebook on his phone, making sure they were saved in 3 different places: on his phone, in the cloud, and sent to David's email. He put his cell phone fully charged. He wore comfortable but presentable clothes, dark jeans and a navy blue long-sleeved blouse. He tied his hair in a tight ponytail. At 2:30 p.m., Rebecca pulled up in front of Janet O'Connor's house. The woman was already waiting on the porch, dressed in a similar way, her face pale but determined. He got into Rebecca's car, and the two exchanged a look of mutual understanding. They didn't have to say anything. Both knew what they were about to do, and both were ready. They arrived at St. Catherine's Church at exactly 2:45. The parking lot already had some cars, parents leaving their children for catechesis. Rebecca and Janet got out of the car and walked to the entrance, where Father Michael was, as usual, welcoming the children. When she saw Rebecca and Janet together, something briefly changed in her expression, a glimmer of something Rebecca couldn't fully identify, but that felt like a warning. Emma was among the children who arrived. When he saw his mother, he ran to her. "Mom, what are you doing here?" Rebecca knelt down to stand at her daughter's height, held her shoulders gently, and looked deep into her green eyes. I came to accompany you today, my love. Is that it? Go to class, okay? Mommy will be around. Emma nodded, confused but obedient, and joined the other children. Sophie, Janet's daughter, was also there, and exchanged a meaningful look with her mother. Father Michael approached Rebecca and Janet, his polite smile on his face but his eyes cold. Mrs. Mitchell and O'Connor, what a surprise to see them here. Classes are closed to parents, as you know. It's so that children can concentrate without distractions. Rebecca replied in a firm voice, I see, Father. Let's not get in the way. We're just going to stick around today. The priest opened his mouth as if to argue, but then other children arrived and he had to attend to them. Rebecca and Janet entered the church and, unlike other times, did not sit discreetly in the back. They stood near the door leading to the parish hall, where they could clearly observe what was happening. The minutes dragged on like hours. At 3 o'clock, the class began. Rebecca could see through the glass window of the door the 18 children sitting in a circle. Father Michael in the center holding a large Bible. Everything seemed normal, appropriate, innocent, but Rebecca knew that this was just the facade. At 3:15, just as Emma had described, just as Rebecca had witnessed before, Father Michael made a gesture. 5 girls stood up, Emma, Sophie, Isabella Torres, Megan Walsh, and a 5th girl Rebecca discovered was named Chloe Bennett. The 5 left the parish hall accompanied by the priest, walking in silent file towards the sacristy. Rebecca felt her heart race. Janet stood beside her, her hands clenched into fists, her breathing quickening. The two looked at each other, a silent agreement passing between them. It was now. Father Michael opened the door of the sacristy and gestured for the girls to enter. They obeyed, heads down as always, and he went in behind them, closing the door. Rebecca and Janet waited exactly 5 minutes. They wanted to allow enough time for the priest to start whatever he did in that room, so that he could not deny it later on the grounds that it had barely begun. Rebecca looked at the clock on her phone, counting down the seconds, 3:20, 3:21, 3:22. When the clock struck 3:25, Rebecca took the first step toward the sacristy. Janet followed her immediately. The 2 women walked determinedly through the nave of the church, their footsteps echoing in the silence of the sacred space. A few candles flickered near the altar, casting dancing shadows on the stone walls. When they reached the door of the sacristy, Rebecca did not hesitate. He knocked on the door firmly, 3 loud knocks that echoed, "Father Michael, I need to talk to you now." Absolute silence on the other side. Rebecca waited 3 seconds and hit again, even harder. "Father Michael, open this door." Finally, they heard footsteps approaching. The door opened only a crack, and Father Michael's face appeared, visibly annoyed. "Ms. Mitchell, we are in a time of private prayer. Please wait outside. I'll talk to you when we're done." Rebecca didn't back down an inch. "I said it now, Father. Either you open that door completely, or I open it myself." The priest tried to keep his composure, but Rebecca saw the muscle in his jaw contract. "This is extremely inadequate. You are interrupting a sacred moment." "Sacred." Rebecca's voice rose in tone. "Let's see how sacred is what is happening inside." And without waiting for permission, he pushed the door hard. The door opened completely, revealing the interior of the sacristy. It was a medium-sized room, with a small window at the top that let in little light. There was a dark wood cupboard where the liturgical vestments were kept, a table with a large crucifix, and in the center of the room, just as Emma had described in her drawings, 5 girls seated in a circle on the floor. They were all bowed, their shoulders hunched, their hands clasped in their laps. Emma was on the right, Sophie on the left. Isabella, Megan, and Chloe completed the circle. Neither of them looked up as the door opened. It was as if they were in a trance, or too afraid to raise their eyes. Father Michael was standing in the center of the circle, holding a large wooden crucifix with both hands, raised at chest height. His posture was intimidating, his broad shoulders seeming to take up all the space, his black cassock making him look even bigger. His expression was frozen between shock and anger at being interrupted. Rebecca entered the room like a hurricane. Janet was close behind, her eyes already filled with tears as she saw Sophie in that state. Rebecca walked straight to Emma, knelt beside her daughter, and pulled her into a protective embrace. Emma, feeling her mother's arms, completely collapsed, beginning to cry uncontrollably, deep sobs that shook her small body. "Mom," Emma whispered between sobs, "you shouldn't be here. Now something bad is going to happen. Now God will." "Shh, my love. Nothing bad will happen. Mom's here. You're safe now," Rebecca whispered, holding her daughter tightly as she cast a withering glance at Father Michael. Janet did the same to Sophie, hugging her daughter and pushing her away from the center of the circle. The other three girls sat paralyzed, staring at the scene with eyes wide with fear and confusion. Rebecca stood up, still holding Emma to her, and faced Father Michael. His voice came out firm, charged with a controlled rage that burned like fire. "What are you doing with these children?" The priest took a deep breath, composing himself, and tried to assume the tone of authority that always worked. "Mrs. Mitchell, you are completely out of your mind. Interrupting a prayer session, invading a sacred space of the church, causing this scandal. This is unacceptable." "Unacceptable?" Rebecca felt her anger explode. He took his phone out of his pocket with his free hand and opened the gallery, showing the photos from Emma's notebook. "This is unacceptable, Father Michael. My daughter wrote that you told her that if she told me anything, I would go to hell because of her. You terrorize these children with fear of divine punishment, with threats that their families will suffer if they tell your special secrets. This is not religious teaching. This is manipulation. This is psychological abuse." Father Michael looked at the photos on Rebecca's phone, and for the first time her mask of composure began to crack. His eyes blinked rapidly, his jaw clenched, his hands gripping the crucifix tighter. "You are interpreting it wrong. I teach about sin, about confession, about the importance of keeping certain matters between the child and God. They are traditional methods of religious education." "Traditional methods?" Janet screamed, her voice echoing in the room. She was also standing now, holding Sophie. "My daughter lost 5 kilos in 2 weeks. She wakes up screaming in the middle of the night. She's afraid of the dark because she thinks that God is watching her every move, ready to punish. What kind of traditional method causes this in 9-year-olds?" Rebecca stepped forward, placing herself between the children and the priest. "Children of this age do not have the emotional maturity to deal with concepts of mortal sin, hell, eternal damnation. You use the fear of what they love most, their families, to keep them silent. And why? What do you gain by keeping these girls isolated, scared, carrying secrets that destroy them inside?" Father Michael tried to keep his voice calm, but there was a growing tension in it. "I prepare these children to be spiritual leaders. I teach them about responsibility, about the seriousness of faith, about sacrifice. If modern mothers don't understand traditional methods of catechesis, the problem lies in today's permissive society, not in my teachings. Responsibility." Rebecca felt the tears of anger burn her eyes. "Sacrifice? These are children. They should be learning that God is love, not fear. They should be excited about their first communion, not terrified that a wrong word will condemn their mothers to hell." At that moment, voices coming from the nave of the church indicated that the commotion had attracted attention. Rebecca heard footsteps approaching. The door to the sacristy, which had been left open, allowed Sister Martha to appear, followed by two other mothers who were waiting in the parking lot and had heard the screams. Sister Martha entered the sacristy with an alarmed expression. "What's going on here? Father Michael, what?" Rebecca turned to the nun, still holding Emma. "Do you want to know what's going on, Sister Martha? I'll show you." He opened the photos again on his cell phone and showed them to the nun. "These are my daughter's notes. Drawings of crying children, locked doors, phrases about not being able to tell secrets about their mother going to hell. That's what's happening in Father Michael's special prayer sessions." Sister Martha took her cell phone with trembling hands and started scrolling through the photos. Rebecca watched as the nun's face changed from confusion to horror. The woman put her hand to her mouth, letting out a small sound of shock. Father Michael tried to intervene. "Sister Martha, these are distorted interpretations of—" "Distorted interpretations," Rebecca cut him off. His voice was loud now, not screaming, but projected in such a way that everyone in the room could hear clearly. "Do you mean that a 9-year-old child, who draws other children crying in closed rooms, who writes, 'I can't count 100 times' in his notebook, who has nightmares every night, is misinterpreting his teachings?" Janet stepped forward, her face red with tears and anger. "My daughter told me 2 weeks ago that she couldn't tell certain secrets because the priest had said that God would punish the whole family. What kind of priest does this to children?" The other mothers who had entered the room now approached. One of them, Mrs. Torres, Isabella's mother, looked at her daughter still sitting on the floor and ran to her. "Isabella, my God, are you okay?" Isabella looked up, full of tears, and whispered, "Mom, I'm sorry. I tried to be good. I tried to keep the secrets as he asked, but—" Mrs. Torres hugged her daughter tightly, looking at Father Michael with an expression of utter shock. "What secrets? What did you do to my daughter?" Rebecca seized the moment. He raised his cell phone and started recording video. "Father Michael, do you deny that you told these children that their families would suffer if they told them about what happens in this room?" The priest looked at the cell phone being pointed at him, and Rebecca saw panic begin to settle in her eyes. He was losing control of the situation, and he knew it. His hands squeezed the crucifix so tightly that his knuckles turned white. I taught about the sacredness of confession, on how certain spiritual matters should remain between the child and God, about the seriousness of sin," he said, but his voice no longer had the firmness it once was. "You used fear," Rebecca said, each word coming out clear and precise. "You took vulnerable children, separated them from others, brought them into this closed room, and used the concept of God that they loved to scare them, to control them, to make them carry an emotional weight that no child should carry. You made them believe that protecting their own sanity, that talking to their own mothers, was a sin. This is not teaching, Father. This is psychological abuse." More people had arrived now. The door to the sacristy was open, and in the corridor, Rebecca could see at least 10 parishioners attracted by the commotion. Mrs. Rodriguez, the volunteer catechist, was among them, her eyes wide with shock. Sister Martha finally found her voice. She still held Rebecca's cell phone, still looking at the photos in the notebook. When he spoke, his voice was trembling but firm. "Father Michael, I need to see all the children in the special group. I need to talk to each of them and to their parents immediately." The priest tried to regain his authority. "Sister Martha, this is a misunderstanding. These mothers are protecting their daughters." Sister Martha interrupted him, and there was something new in his voice, a harshness that Rebecca had never heard before. "And I should have paid more attention when you insisted so much on having private sessions with select groups of children. I should have questioned why always young girls. I should have asked why in a closed room without supervision. Father Michael realized that he was cornered. Rebecca saw in his eyes the exact moment when he understood that there was no turning back. There was no explanation that could wipe this away. He let go of the crucifix, which fell to the ground with a dull thud, and tried to walk towards the door. But Rebecca moved, blocking the way. "You are not going anywhere until everyone here knows exactly what you have done, until each family understands what happened to their daughters." Janet also blocked the other side of the door. The two mothers formed a human barrier, and behind them, other women who had entered the sacristy took position. Mrs. Torres was hugging Isabella. Mrs. Walsh had pulled Megan close. Mrs. Bennett, Chloe's mother, who hadn't even realized that her daughter was in the special group, was in tears holding the girl. If you're here, it's because this story deserves to be heard. I believe that what comes next will surprise you even more. Don't leave this video before you find out how it all ended. The scene in the sacristy quickly turned into something that St. Catherine's Church had never witnessed in its 100 years of history. More than 20 people were now crowded in the doorway and hallway, all trying to understand what was happening. Rebecca overheard fragments of conversations, people asking each other what had happened, why the mothers were yelling at Father Michael. Sister Martha took control of the situation. In a firm voice, he asked everyone to calm down and leave the sacristy. "Please, everyone to the parish hall, now. We need to solve this in an organized way." Rebecca still held Emma, who had stopped crying but was shaking. Janet had Sophie wrapped in her arms. The other 3 girls in the special group were with their mothers, all in different states of shock and tears. The group left the sacristy and walked down the corridor to the parish hall, where the other 13 children of the catechesis were still, now without class, talking to each other, confused. Mrs. Rodriguez, seeing Rebecca and the other mothers enter with the visibly shaken girls, approached. "What happened? Where is Father Michael?" "He's coming right away," Sister Martha replied in a tense voice. In fact, Father Michael appeared moments later, walking slowly, his shoulders slumped, the expression of someone who knew that everything had fallen apart. Sister Martha positioned herself in the center of the room and asked for silence. "I ask all parents to pick up their children now. The class was closed. Tomorrow, we will send an official communication about what will happen with the catechesis program." There were confused murmurs, but the parents began to get up and pick up the children. Rebecca remained where she was, Emma still clinging to her. "I wasn't going to leave until I was sure Father Michael wouldn't go unpunished." When most of the families had left, leaving only the 5 families of the special group, Sister Martha, Mrs. Rodriguez, and a few members of the parish council who had been called, the nun turned to Father Michael. "Father, you need to explain exactly what happened in these private sessions, and he needs to explain now, in front of everyone." Father Michael took a deep breath. For a long moment, it seemed that he would try to maintain his history, his religious justifications. But then, perhaps realizing that he was facing concrete evidence and multiple witnesses, his stance changed. He didn't confess exactly, but his words were revealing. I tried to teach these children about the seriousness of the faith, about how the modern world is losing traditional values, about how even young children need to understand the gravity of sin." He paused. "Maybe. Perhaps my methods have been too rigorous for modern sensibilities, but my intentions were to prepare these girls to be faithful devotees." "Too strict," Janet exploded. "You made my daughter believe that God hated her, that any small mistake would condemn the whole family." Rebecca stepped forward, still holding Emma. "You isolated these 5 girls from the other children. Why? If the teaching was so important, why not for all 18 children? Why only for them? Why in a closed room? Why with threats to keep it secret?" Father Michael did not respond. He just lowered his eyes. Sister Martha picked up the phone. "I'm calling Bishop Carrington. He needs to know this immediately. And I am suspending you from all functions with children until there is a full investigation." "No," Rebecca said firmly. "It is not enough to suspend. It needs to be removed completely, and the diocese needs to investigate whether this has happened to other children in the last 15 years, because I very much doubt that Emma and these 4 girls are the only victims." The word victims echoed in the hall with immense weight. Father Michael looked up quickly as if to protest, but then he seemed to think better of it and remained silent. Mr. Donovan, one of the oldest members of the parish council, a man of 70 years who had been a parishioner of St. Catherine's all his life, stood up. His voice was trembling with emotion. "Father Michael, I trusted in you. We all trust. And you. Did you use our trust? Did you use our faith? Did you use the authority we gave you to hurt children?" "I've never touched any children," the priest said quickly, defensively. "There was never inappropriate physical contact." "Abuse doesn't have to be physical to destroy a child," Rebecca replied, her voice cutting as a blade. "Emotional abuse, psychological manipulation, religious terror. It leaves scars as deep as any physical wound, sometimes deeper because no one can see them." Sister Martha was on the phone with the bishop now, explaining the situation in a low but urgent voice. When he hung up, he turned to everyone. "Bishop Carrington comes here immediately. He told no one to leave. He wants to talk to all the families involved and to Father Michael." For the next 40 minutes, as they waited for the bishop, the 5 mothers began talking to each other, comparing notes, sharing signs they had noticed but not fully understood up to that point. Mrs. Torres revealed that Isabella had stopped eating properly, losing weight in a worrying way. Mrs. Walsh said that Megan had developed a nervous tic, pulling her own hair. Mrs. Bennett, still in shock, told me that Chloe had begun to have panic attacks, something that had never happened before the catechism classes. All 5 girls were between 8 and 10 years old. All were from devout families and active in the parish. All were described by their mothers as sensitive, obedient children who took their faith seriously, and they had all been systematically manipulated by a man who was supposed to protect them spiritually. Rebecca looked at the other 4 girls and saw Emma in each of them. He saw the way they cringed, how they avoided eye contact, how they carried on their small shoulders a weight they shouldn't know. And she felt immense gratitude for having trusted her instinct, for not having given up, even when everyone said she was exaggerating. When Bishop Carrington finally arrived, he listened to each mother with grave attention. He looked at the pictures in Emma's notebook. He talked briefly and privately with each of the 5 girls, kneeling to stand at their height, speaking in a soft, patient voice. Afterwards, he had a long, closed conversation with Father Michael in a separate room. When he left this private meeting, the bishop's face was dark. He gathered everyone together again and made a pronouncement that Rebecca would never forget. "On behalf of the Diocese of Boston and the Catholic Church, I deeply apologize to each of these families. What happened here is unacceptable and goes against everything our faith stands for. Father Michael is immediately removed from all ministerial duties. There will be a full investigation, not only into these specific cases, but into all the catechesis programs conducted by him in the last 15 years. I will hire a child psychologist who specializes in trauma to offer free treatment to all affected children. And we will implement new safety protocols in all parishes under my jurisdiction. Never again will a child be put in a vulnerable situation like this." Rebecca felt a huge relief wash over her, but also a residual anger. What about consequences for him? Is he just going to be transferred to another parish where he can do the same thing? The bishop shook his head. No. Father Michael will be referred to a program of strict supervision. He will never work with minors again. And if the investigation reveals what I suspect it will, there will be more consequences. Legal, if necessary. Father Michael, who was sitting alone in a corner of the hall, suddenly seemed much smaller. The black cassock that once gave him authority now looked like just a garment. He was no longer an imposing figure of religious power. It was just a middle-aged man who had abused his position and was finally being held accountable. Before leaving the hall that afternoon, Rebecca approached Father Michael. He looked up at her, and there was something about them that could have been remorse, or maybe just fear of the consequences. Rebecca held Emma with one arm, and in a low but firm voice said, "You had the chance to shape the faith of these children with love, with compassion, with the true message of God. But he chose fear. He chose the controller. And because of that, it will take years for these girls to be able to separate God from the trauma that you caused. I hope you think about it every day." She turned and left, Janet and the other mothers following behind, each carrying her daughters, forming a united front of maternal protection that had finally broken the silence and exposed the truth. Before we continue, help bring real stories to those who really care. If you want to be part of this mission, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell. The 2 weeks that followed were intense and emotionally exhausting for Rebecca and Emma. The Diocese of Boston moved quickly as promised. Father Michael was formally removed from all duties and transferred to a religious house in another state where he would be supervised, although Rebecca knew this essentially meant exile. A new priest, Father Thomas Riley, a 35-year-old with a reputation for being welcoming and transparent, was assigned to St. Catherine's. The investigation began immediately. Investigators hired by the diocese have begun reviewing records from the past 15 years, looking for similar patterns. They came into contact with dozens of families whose daughters had participated in catechesis programs during Father Michael's tenure. And, as Rebecca had suspected, Emma and the other 4 girls weren't the only victims. Over the next few weeks, 8 more families came forward, reporting similar behaviors. Daughters who had participated in special groups in previous years, who had shown changes in behavior at the time, but whose parents had not fully understood what was happening. Girls who were now teenagers or young adults, who still carried religious anxiety, fear of authority, difficulty trusting people. The total number of confirmed victims reached 12 children over 3 years. The diocese issued a public statement apologizing and offering free psychological treatment to all those affected. The story made it to local newspapers, though the children's names were kept confidential to protect their privacy. For Emma, the road to recovery began immediately. Rebecca made an appointment with Dr. Lisa Bennett, not Chloe's mother, but a child psychologist specializing in religious trauma that the diocese had hired. Dr. Bennett was a woman in her mid-40s, with short blonde hair, colorfully framed glasses, and a genuinely welcoming smile. In the first session, Emma was tense, sitting on the edge of the comfortable armchair in the psychologist's office, her hands clasped in her lap. Rebecca was next to her, offering silent support. Dr. Bennett didn't force anything. She just talked calmly, asked about things Emma liked, about drawings, about school, about favorite movies. It was not until the 3rd session that Emma began to talk about Father Michael and the special room. The words came out slowly at first, interspersed with long pauses and tears. But Dr. Bennett listened with infinite patience, validating every feeling, explaining that none of Emma's feelings were wrong or exaggerated. "Emma, I want you to understand something very important," Dr. Bennett said in one of the sessions. "What happened was not your fault. You didn't do anything wrong. An adult you trusted used that trust in the wrong way. And everything you felt, the fear, the confusion, the desire to protect your mother even though you're suffering, All of it shows how brave and loving you are. Now let's work together so that you understand that God is not the God that Father Michael described. God is love, not fear. In the first few days after the confrontation at the church, Emma had nightmares worse than ever. He woke up screaming in a cold sweat, saying that God was angry, that the family would be punished. But Rebecca was always there every night, holding her daughter, turning on the lights, whispering words of comfort, until Emma went back to sleep. Gradually, week after week, Emma began to improve. The process was not linear. There were bad days, setbacks, unexpected moments of panic. But there were also good days, moments when Rebecca saw Emma's genuine smile return, heard her laughter, saw her draw in vibrant colors again instead of the dark shadows that had dominated her notebooks for months. The 5 mothers, Rebecca, Janet, Mrs. Torres, Mrs. Walsh and Mrs. Bennett, formed an informal support group. They met once a week at the home of one of them, had coffee or tea, talked about their daughter's progress and challenges, offered support to each other. There was something deeply comforting about being surrounded by women who understood exactly what you were going through, who didn't judge, who shared the same anger and the same fierce love for their children. "Sometimes I feel guilty," Janet admitted at one of those meetings, tears streaming down her face. "As if I should have realized it before, like I should have protected Sophie better." Rebecca held her friend's hand. "I felt that way too, but the truth is that we were manipulated as much as our daughters. He was an authority figure in an institution that we respect. He used our own faith against us. There is no instruction manual that teaches how to identify this. The important thing is that when we perceive, we act. We saved our daughters, and that's what matters." The Brookline community was shaken by the revelation. Some parishioners initially reacted with disbelief, defending Father Michael, insisting that there must be a misunderstanding. But as more details emerged, as more families came forward, denial became impossible. Catherine's had to confront a painful truth. They had failed to protect their children. The new priest, Father Thomas, worked tirelessly to rebuild trust. In his first sermon, he spoke openly about what had happened, without trying to minimize or excuse. "As a faith community, we have failed, and now we need to do better. We need to make sure that every child who walks through these doors feels safe, loved, and protected. This is our commitment going forward." Concrete changes have been implemented. Never again could an activity with children take place behind closed doors. There should always be at least 2 adults present. Parents would have the right to observe any class or activity. A child safety committee was formed, with parent representatives to oversee all programs. Emma, surprisingly, expressed a desire to complete her preparation for First Communion. Rebecca was shocked when her daughter mentioned it 3 months after the incident. They were sitting in the kitchen, Emma drawing while Rebecca prepared dinner. "Mom, can I still make First Communion?" Rebecca dropped the knife she was using to chop vegetables and turned to her daughter. "Do you want to do it, my love? There is no pressure. You can wait as long as you want, or even decide you don't want it anymore. There is no problem at all." Emma thought for a long moment. "I want to, but not because of Father Michael. I want it because now I understand that God is not what he said he was. Dr. Bennett explained it to me, and I want to commune with the real God, not with the God he invented to scare me." Rebecca felt the tears burn her eyes. He knelt next to his daughter and hugged her. "You're so brave, Emma, so strong, and I'll be by your side every step of the way." Emma made her First Communion 6 months later, in April, when the trees of Brookline bloomed with spring colors. Father Thomas conducted the ceremony with kindness and warmth. Emma was radiant in her white dress, a genuine smile lighting up her face. Rebecca, sitting in the front seat, wept with joy and relief as she saw her daughter walk down the aisle without fear, without hesitation, just with pure and renewed faith. The other 4 girls in the special group also made their first communions that day. The 5 walked down the aisle together, a small troop of survivors supporting each other. Their mothers watched with tears in their eyes, hands clasped together, forming a chain of strength and motherly love that had broken the cycle of abuse and restored hope. After the ceremony, there was a celebration in the parish hall. Cakes, lemonade, children running and laughing. Rebecca watched Emma play with Sophie and the other girls, all finally looking light, free of the weight they had carried for so long. There was still a long way to go in the recovery of each one, but that day marked a turning point, a victory over the trauma. David, Rebecca's ex-husband, was present at the ceremony. After the celebration, he approached Rebecca as she watched Emma play. "You saved our daughter," he said in a choked voice. "I didn't believe you at first. I thought I was exaggerating, but you trusted your gut. You saved her from something that could have marked her entire life." Rebecca smiled through her tears. "It wasn't just me, David. It was all of us, all the mothers who didn't give up." David hugged Emma tightly, and for the first time in years, the family felt united again, not by marriage or obligation, but by shared love for the daughter they both loved so much. This scene in the sacristy, which initially seemed like absolute chaos, quickly turned into a moment of immediate justice and validation for all victims. More than 20 parishioners had crowded in the doorway and hallway, attracted by the screams and the commotion. Rebecca, still holding Emma protectively to her chest, turned to the group in a firm but controlled voice. "I need everyone here to understand what we discovered," she said, holding up her phone to show the photos in the notebook. "My daughter and these other girls were psychologically manipulated by Father Michael for weeks. He isolated them in a closed room, talked about sin, secrecy, and divine punishment, making them believe that their families would suffer if they told anything. Look at them. Look at their faces. This is not religious teaching. This is terror." Janet O'Connor, with Sophie in her arms, stepped forward, her voice choked but determined. "My Sophie lost weight, had nightmares, fear of everything. She told me that she could not disappoint the priest, that God watched over her. I didn't understand why. Now I understand." The other 3 mothers, whose daughters were part of the special group, reacted with immediate shock. Mrs. Torres ran to Isabella, who was still sitting on the floor of the sacristy, her eyes wide with confusion. "Isabella, my daughter, why didn't you tell me? Why did you let that happen?" Isabella collapsed in her mother's arms, sobbing. "He said you were going to suffer, Mom, that God was going to punish all of us." Mrs. Walsh and Mrs. Bennett did the same with Megan and Chloe, hugging their daughters tightly, tears streaming down as the questions flowed out. "Why didn't you speak? What did he do to you in this room?" The girls, freed from the weight of imposed silence, began to speak little by little, disconnected pieces of phrases about special secrets, sinful souls, punishment if told. Father Michael tried to defend himself, raising his hands in a conciliatory gesture. "You are exaggerating. I teach about the seriousness of faith, about confession, about obedience. There's nothing wrong with that." But her rhetoric, which once sounded so authoritarian, now seemed empty, fragile in front of the photos in the notebook, the children's testimonies, the video that Rebecca continued to record discreetly. Sister Martha, who initially seemed defensive, approached the girls and listened to their whispered accounts. His face turned pale as wax, his hands trembling as he looked at the priest. "Father Michael, how could you? These are children, innocent." Someone in the parishioners group, Mr. Donovan, the elder of the parish council, picked up the phone and immediately called the Bishop of the Diocese of Boston. "Bishop Carrington, come to St. Catherine's now. It is urgent. It involves children. In just 40 minutes, diocesan representatives arrived, 2 men in dark suits and grave expressions. The bishop himself was unable to come immediately, but sent his direct aides. They listened to Rebecca and the mothers, examined the photos, talked briefly with the girls. Father Michael was escorted out of the church, not handcuffed, but with his dignity destroyed, while an internal investigation was opened at the same time. Rebecca, finally alone with Emma in the church garden, knelt in front of her daughter and embraced her with all her strength. "It's over, my love. You are safe now. No one will hurt you anymore." Mum promised, and I kept it. Emma buried her face in her mother's shoulder, the sobs slowly diminishing. "I was so afraid, Mum. Afraid of you leaving because of me. Never, my angel, never." And in that embrace, under the overcast sky of Brookline, Rebecca felt the triumph of truth over fear. 2 weeks after the confrontation, the Diocese of Boston confirmed the permanent removal of Father Michael. The investigation revealed a pattern of psychological manipulation with at least 12 children over the course of 3 years, all girls between the ages of 8 and 10, selected for special groups. He was transferred to a program of strict supervision in an isolated religious house, forbidden to ever work with minors again. St. Catherine's has hired Dr. Lisa Bennett, a child psychologist who specializes in religious trauma, to see all affected children free of charge. Emma started weekly therapy. In the first days, the nightmares were intense, but gradually she returned to smiling, drawing with bright colors, talking about God without trembling in her voice. Rebecca reunited with the other mothers, Janet, Mrs. Torres, Mrs. Walsh, and Mrs. Bennett, forming a weekly support group. Together they created a protocol with the parish: no activities with children behind closed doors, always an additional supervisor, parents with the right to observe classes. The community, initially divided between disbelief and anger, recognized Rebecca's courage. Emma, 3 months later, decided to make her first communion with the new priest, Father Thomas, a 35-year-old man who is transparent and welcoming. At the ceremony, she walked radiantly, surrounded by true love, free from the fear that once imprisoned her. Rebecca Mitchell never imagined that her journey as a mother would lead her to face an institution that she deeply respected. But when Emma begged on her knees not to make her first communion, something inside Rebecca awoke, that ancient, powerful maternal instinct that all mothers know. For weeks, she investigated, doubted herself, faced resistance from everyone around. But he never gave up. The discovery of Emma's notebook, with words like "I can't count" written down over and over again, confirmed her worst fears. Father Michael used fear of God, guilt, and the threat of eternal suffering to manipulate innocent children. There was no physical abuse, but the emotional scars were deep. Rebecca didn't just save her daughter, she saved 12 children who carried toxic secrets, paralyzing fear, and made-up guilt. Today, Emma is healing, smiling again, learning that God is love, not fear. If this story touched your heart, if you are a mother, grandmother, aunt, or know someone with young children, share this video. Stories like this need to be told because predators don't just use physical force, they use words, fear, authority, and manipulation. Leave your like so that more people can watch this story. Subscribe to the channel to receive more heartwarming stories of motherly courage every week. Turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any new videos. In the comments, tell us if you've ever been through something similar or if you know someone who should have heard a story like that. Your participation helps other mothers not feel alone when their gut tells them something is wrong. The next video that's popping up on your screen tells the story of a mother who realized her teenage son's best friend wasn't who he claimed to be. What she found out about this boy, who had been attending her house for months, will leave you speechless. It's a story about trust betrayed, hidden danger, and a mother who didn't rest until she discovered the truth. You can't miss this exciting story. Click now and watch. Rebecca taught Emma something fundamental. Her voice matters, her feelings are valid, and no one, priest, teacher, coach, or any authority figure, has the right to make her feel guilty for protecting herself. Mothers are not born to be naive. They are born to be warriors when necessary. Trust your gut. If something seems wrong, it's probably wrong. No matter how many people tell you you're overreacting, no matter how respected the suspicious person is, your child's emotional and physical safety comes first. Always. Emma made her first communion 6 months later, radiant and happy, surrounded by true love. And Rebecca, she remains vigilant because that's what being a mother is all about, protecting without fear. A big kiss, and see you in the next heartwarming story.